Hello, this is Luke, and we're back with another episode of building an exercise tracking web app from scratch. In this episode, we're actually just about done with our web app. So it's going to be a little bit of an odd one here. We're going to be doing some cleanup work and maybe working on a couple other things in the meantime, just to fill out the stream a little bit. And then next stream, I'll be starting on another project, and I'll talk about that at the end. But in the meantime, let's just run the app here. There is one more app change that I want to make before we wrap up, so let's do that. Or no, I want to go to this one. Okay, so I want to update this screenshot. The screenshot hasn't been updated to use the new colors or the new kind of theme, so got to fix that. Should be simple enough if I can just remember how I did it. First, we have to sign in. And then let's just add some exercises here. So we could do interval sprints, 3 reps of 30 seconds each. High intensity. We're also going to add barbell press, 5 reps of 45, whatever. And we'll do planks. That's 1 minute, 0 seconds. Looks kind of weird with only the 1 0. Doesn't really matter, but for the screenshot, I'll fix that. And we'll do deadlift as well. Why not? This would be a weird workout. Let's say 225 for the deadlift. Sure. Okay. So now I believe I kind of shrank this before I took the screenshot. If I switch this to responsive, it was like this. Yeah, something like that. And then we could just go ahead and take a screenshot. How do I do that? There was like some weird, wasn't there some weird way to do that? Yeah, capture screenshot. Okay. Then I'm going to, in a separate window, I'm going to open that screenshot and move it over into my VS Code session here. Let's see if this works. If I just drag it in, does that, this was going under public. Yeah. Okay, that did work. So this one is going to be, let's delete this screenshot dark and rename this to screenshot dark. And then we'll do the same thing for the light mode screenshot here. So let's switch it to light mode, doink. And we'll take another screenshot, capture screenshot. Okie doke. And then this one will get dragged over as well. Delete screenshot light, rename this screenshot light. Or wait, I deleted the wrong screenshot. Delete this one. There we go. Okay, we've got our 2 screenshots. So now I think that's really all we need to do. If I actually close this stuff, sign out, and now the screenshot on the homepage is updated to use the new colors. If I switch it to dark mode, it switches to dark mode. Very nice. Let's commit that. Update screenshot. Okay. Now let's talk about where we're at. So if we look at, for example, our notes here, everything is checked off. Everything is checked off except for this section about will not be done. Maybe it's kind of cheating to just take all of the unchecked stuff and move it into a will not be done section, but that's what we're doing. A lot of these things are more along the lines of ideas. They're not really necessary for the functionality of the app. At a certain point, when you're working on these apps, especially just as a hobby project, there comes a time where you need to wrap it up, put a bow on it, and ship it, right? And that doesn't mean that you can't work on it anymore. And, this has been being shipped incrementally the whole time. Each time we push a commit to GitHub, that's getting shipped. It's not like we're shipping it all at once. But what we are going to do is switch focus away from this app. We'll still fix bugs. We might come back to it later, but it's not going to be the main thing that I'm building. And particularly on stream, I want to, do something a little different. So in order to do that, I kind of want to actually put that bow on it, so to speak. So part of that is looking at the README here, making sure that this is up to date. So I'm just going to read through this. I probably won't talk for a minute. Okay, seems fine. I'm going to put the screenshot in here as well, actually. So we will do screenshot of the app. And we will do a light mode screenshot here. We don't really have the choice to do it dynamically. So if I do like public /screenshot light and preview that. Yeah, so now we've got the actual screenshot so that people can see it in GitHub as well. Seems nice. And that's probably pretty much all we need to do. Let's go ahead and push these changes. And let's actually check out what that looks like on GitHub as well. So, here, so this is not going to work because I closed that. But if I go source code, this is our app. We've got the light mode screenshot here. Could do dark mode. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, seems good. And that's pretty much it. I'll go ahead and put a little description in here. Website set.luketurner.org. If I can spell my own name, that would be great. And then description, I'll just say a simple exercise tracking web app. Cool. And then, if somebody clicks this link, it'll take them to the actual app. And I should probably make sure that this still works. So we can see here, like this build is doing its thing. Once this is done, the screenshot should be updated. That's the only thing we actually changed in this build. So don't really need to wait for that. But if I sign in with GitHub here, then, we get our stuff. I totally forgot that I had created this onboarding thing. Very nice. And, we can create our exercises. Do the stuff. Go to the today page, add something. Net 0. Lots of weight, but it's also assisted. So net 0. Click this thing. kind of slow. See how it started spinning like that? Probably this deployment just finished. So now it's actually doing a new pod. Yeah. We can go settings. You know, that could pick something if we wanted. Don't really care. Manual. Very cool. And if I sign out, now that it's got the new pod, it should have the updated, or I shouldn't really call them pods. That's my Kubernetes terminology leaking through, but Fly doesn't use Kubernetes. You know, these are called Fly machines. And the machine has like a virtual machine in there somewhere, like a Firecracker virtual machine or something like that. Okay, so that's pretty much done. I'm going to say that that's done. And one of the things that I like to do when something is done, which I'm going to do here on stream with you as well, is add it to my website, luketurner.org. So on this website, I've got a bunch of these projects that I've done over the years. And you know, the cool thing about these, it's cool to me anyway, is that all of these still work. You know, all of these web apps and stuff, except for this Context Commander one, all the others, it's like they're still hosted online. They still work. I can open the Sudoku one and play a game of Sudoku, you know? So things like that. I really like just having this sort of history. I'm now trying to fill in a Sudoku square. I've become nerd sniped by the app that I opened. Let's see. Like this is a 4. You can tell that's a 4 because the 4 can't be here because there's 4 in that row. It can't be here and it can't be here, but there has to be one somewhere in this square. So that's a 4. Anyway, having successfully found one, I'm now done with Sudoku. So anyway, I would like to add the Dust app here, or the simple exercise tracker app here to this list. So let's go ahead and do that. You can, sometimes I'll just edit that HTML document right in GitHub, but in this case, we're going to be adding a new screenshot. So I'm actually going to do it locally. I have a local checkout of that repository here. So we're just going to add a new block to the websites. One thing about this page, my homepage, it's plain HTML, very simple, you know, and the CSS is all right here. That's all of the CSS for the whole page. So simple page, deliberately tried to keep it not fancy. Anyway, so here we're going to add set, and I'm just going to call it simple exercise tracker here because I feel like that's a bit more of an intuitive name. Desktop and mobile friendly, that's true. And then this is going to be exercise tracker. Yeah. Okay. And we're going to need to update this. Let's call it set screenshot of sets today page with some example exercises or sets recorded. Sure. Okie doke. And, you know, just to show this off, I have Python, right? Python? Yeah. Exit me. I'm just going to launch a simple server here. So this is going to be opening on port 8000. So now if I open localhost 8000, it's my site. The screenshot's broken because we have to pull that in. Also have to update the text here, obviously. But both of these links should work. Yep. Cool. Let me just copy that from my downloads again over here. So I want the light mode one, which is this. So if I put this, that's fine. And then I'll put it into static. I will rename this to set. And again, here I'm just doing light mode for consistency with the rest of the page. Refresh this. And now we've got a nice screenshot for the app, and if you click it, it opens up a big version. Okay. And then we can update the description. Am I forgetting one here? Weight, assisted weight, distance, duration, intensity. I feel like there was 6 things, and I feel like I only wrote 5. Which one am I forgetting here? Let's just look. Also, I like the wording I use there for recording exercises and tracking them over time. Edit. Reps. Oh, reps. I forgot reps. And I'll format this better once I actually have the text finished. So let's just get rid of all of this. Logging in with your GitHub account. And I'm also going to note this app was built during a live stream, or a series of live streams, let's say, on twitch.tv/Luke Turner SW. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Looks fine. I forgot that this isn't actually Markdown, so I'm going to need to make this a link if I want it to be clickable. And then get rid of that. And I don't really like how it's such a long thing there. I'll probably just do that. Yeah, okay. And then obviously we need to update this built with section. So this is built with, I just like to call out the interesting stuff here. So we've got bun. This does use bun, right? Let's do a new window here and open it again. You'd think I'd remember. Okay. Bun. Express is the other big one. Bun. Express. Drizzle. I'm going to add drizzle in the mix. Where's like the home page here? This thing. So we're going to do a drizzle. And Postgres. I don't know why. I guess it's my spell checker doesn't understand having a links in the middle of my sentence. So it's built with bun, express, drizzle, and Postgres deployed on fly. So if I just double check that these links are all working. Yep. Postgres. This thing. Oh, that's weird. Cool. Okay, and that's fine. So let's actually push that as well. So we could call this add simple exercise tracker web app. And just to confirm the change here, we're just adding this one block of stuff. And obviously the image. And let's push that. Okay. Oh, that's done. If we actually go to luketurner.org now, it'll take a minute, but that's interesting that it kind of, it's different something. Wait, what? This one's zoomed in. Since when has that been zoomed in? That's not sure what's up with that. Anyway. Okay, so now we can see that's live on my site. There's probably some other stuff I should update on this site too. I usually only get to it every few years, but I'm not going to do that today. But what I am going to do is think about how to spend the rest of the stream now, because we pretty much wrapped up with this one particular project. I do have another project in mind that I'm going to talk about at the end of the stream, but I don't actually want to start on that yet. I want to start from scratch, with a fresh stream. So what I might do is actually spend a little time working on another project that I've been working on off stream. So it's not a greenfield project at all, but it might be an interesting way to spend some time and just see sort of an alternative approach, a very different type of project than this exercise tracker one. How's that sound? Gonna do this one. Let's close all that. So what is this? This is another app of mine. If we go back to my GitHub page here, scroll. We're going to be taking a look at this webhook testing tool. And this one, you can see a screenshot of what this is here as well. It's basically an app that allows you to, it hosts a web server in the cloud, ideally, and then that web server will respond to arbitrary HTTP requests. And based on that response, or based on that request, it'll actually be able to run some code to generate a response. So it's sort of like a dynamic web server where the code is actually stored in the database. But it also tracks the exact request and response, including the headers, the raw body, etc., so that you can see what was received. And that's why it's called a webhook testing tool, because the main point is to test services sending webhooks to see, okay, what are they actually sending? If you've ever used webhook.site, this is a free tool that works similarly. You get this URL and then you can, get it. And you can see that here. You can see what request the browser sent and so on. The thing about webhook.site, it has good features, but it also has some features that I wanted that were limited behind a payment gate. And also it just seemed like a cool thing to try and build myself. So I'm, building a personal version of this. And again, as you probably are not surprised by this point, but it's hosted on Fly. So let's just jump right into the app now. The interesting thing about this is my workflow for this app is incredibly different from my workflow for simple exercise tracker. There's a few things. One, the stack is totally different. It does also use Bun, but this uses React. It's an isomorphic client-server application, so the same modules can be imported in both the client and the server code. And it has, all these React components in here, and it uses ShadCN, UI, and Tailwind for the UI framework. So it's a more modern stack. Instead of using Pug and Alpine, we're using React, and instead of using Bulma, we're using ShadCN UI. But the other interesting thing about this is that I've been heavily using Claude Code to basically vibe code this app. And I know that there's mixed feelings about vibe coding, and I've kind of tried to avoid doing it on stream because I do think that it's pretty boring to watch. It can be kind of interesting to see the workflow though. So I have actually recorded a video of me adding some of these features, these latest commits basically. And I'm going to be uploading that on YouTube, on my YouTube profile. I'm going to be fast forwarding the parts that are annoyingly slow, or you're just kind of waiting for the AI. But also I have a workflow now where I actually am using multiple separate Git work trees to do separate AI tasks at the same time. So there's less waiting than you might think. You kick off an AI task, immediately switch to another work tree, kick off another one, go back to the first, etc. Probably not going to be doing much of that on stream, though, yet, although I'm curious to hear if you would be interested in seeing that. But I will just kind of keep going with what I was doing with this beforehand, before the stream. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's actually run it here. Let's see, get rid of that exercise tracker. So one of the cool things, in my opinion, about the way that I do development on this app is I've actually built a script that opens up a new work tree automatically. And then in that work tree, which, a work tree is like a separate directory for your Git repository. A separate directory, a separate branch. In that directory, it's actually going to open these, basically this tmux session where it's got these three windows. There's Claude in the top left. There's the application server, bun run dev down here in the bottom left. And then on the right here is lazy Git. And this is going to be where we can see what changes Claude actually makes. So one of the things that's kind of annoying about this though is I have to do this. This is running in a GitHub code space. So to explain what's going on here. Cool. Yes, I accept. So this is running in a GitHub code space. You can see that up here. So it's not actually running on my computer, which is also why I'm comfortable running this in bypassing permissions mode. It shouldn't be able to access anything that's not actually part of this virtual machine. It can still, make web requests and stuff like that, but this data is not private. There's nothing for it to exfiltrate, even if somebody were to try and do that. So the risk of running it in bypassing permissions mode is quite low. And so, let's actually do something here. if I go over here, did I do this? Maybe we could do that. Let's see if I look at the components, copy request modal here. It just does the request, the headers. Okay, so it is not really handling those. Okay, so let's ask Claude to analyze how the copy request modal, we can actually use @ here to reference the file directly. Copy request modal, this one, works. And this is just a starting point that I like to do with these things, where I'm basically getting Claude to populate its own context here. I could explain it how it works, but instead I'm just going to ask Claude to read the file and explain it to itself. Okay, and then we're going to say update the modal to support the request query params property of request event when generating curl fetch raw. Sure. And kind of to explain this, so we have this request events schema here, and one of the things on it is request query params. This is something that was added recently. Previously, you would just put them right into the URL, but I like to have them separate. But that's not actually reflected in the copy as behavior. So we can run that. And while that's running, I'm actually going to open the admin server here. So port 3003. One kind of other cool thing, 3003, about this worktree-based workflow is it's actually, like each time I create a new worktree, it actually checks for the next available port and does that. So if I were to run WT new again in a new terminal window, it would use port 3005 because that's the next available port for that app server. Okay. Sign in. Just have this hard-coded username and password for local testing. And then we get into the admin dashboard here. So here you can actually see kind of how it works. We define these handlers, and the handlers can run these scripts. So whenever this method and path are matched, which is actually using express style matching. So you could even do like a colon param in this path, and that's going to match any value in that path segment, and it's going to be populated in request.params, just like with express. Whenever one of those things are hit, this handler script is going to be run. And you can even run multiple handler scripts if you use star to kind of define like a middleware. And you can see in the handler documentation here that there's a variety of different things that are exposed for the handlers to use. But I don't want to get too much into just explaining how the app works. We're actually here to make some changes. And if we look at the requests here, you can see these requests. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's see what's going on here. So here we have some updates. It kind of explains what it did. And we can also look over here and see what it did. It's adding query params logic here, and then it's using that when it's building the full URL. I don't know if that's going to work for everything. So what this is going to affect is over here when we click this and we do copy request as, we'll be able to select curl, fetch, or raw. And if I go to here and I do like query and I add a query parameter, test bar, see what happens when there's a space in it. And I send that. We can see that appears here. So it shows up in the URL like that with the query parameters, which that's another thing we could maybe update because they also do show up down here. That's kind of a preference thing. Maybe, do you want it up here or not? It's kind of nice to have it up there because then you can also search for it. Like I could search for test equals. So maybe that's fine. And if I do copy as though, is it going to include it twice or something like that? Something weird? Yeah, so it's got it in there twice. Which is interesting because it's taking, yeah, how should we fix that? It's not really related to the change we just did. And if we do copy request as, we can see that this has, it has both of them here, although you can't really see that part because it's covered up by the copy button, and both of them here. So it is properly adding the query parameters object to each of these things. So we're actually just going to commit this for starters here. Click over here, /commit. And I do have this other thing here that I was working on beforehand. So I guess that's probably going to be something to commit to, although because this is in a separate work tree, it's not going to see that, I guess. So we should be fine. And then we need to figure out, so this is an area where it's actually my mental model that's a bit wonky, which is previously the query parameters were always stored in request URL. But now there's this separate structure for them. And we really want query parameters to never be in request URL anymore, I guess, because they should be in this separate structure. I don't know. Yeah, ultimately, I'm not sure how much utility there is in having a separate structure for it, but that's the direction we're going. We'll see how it works. But we can see here that we made this commit. Right? Yeah, okay. Just took a minute to update there, it seems like. And so just to illustrate here, what I can then do is quit this tmux session. I said quit this tmux session. Yeah. And I'll get prompted to basically cherry pick those commits into my main branch. So I can pull in that commit. Okay, so the question is, now I'm actually going to spin up a new one. So there wasn't really any reason to kill that work tree, but I just sort of wanted to illustrate what happens. So we're spinning up a new work tree here. And now we're going to, this is interesting, tilde expansion support. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. We're going to ask Claude to fix this issue for us. So when creating request events, from incoming requests in webhook server, the query parameters are being stored in request URL as well as request query params. Adjust the logic so they are only stored in request query params. And we'll see what Cloud has to say about that. And in the meantime, one of the things that I was actually doing as well was switching this from using tmux to Zellij. I don't really know how you pronounce that. Zellij, which is a tmux-like tool that it seems to be a little bit easier to configure, and also I'm having fewer issues with it. With tmux, I've had some issues with, like when I try scrolling here, it's like it sort of will mess things up over time. I'm not entirely sure that's tmux related because we have like 3 nested processes here passing standard out to each other, standard in. Like there's the webhook testing tool script, WT new, then there's also tmux, and then there's also Claude Code, and all 3 of these like interactive tools are, handling the standard input output streams or whatever they're called. But I think it's tmux that was causing an issue. So I kind of wanted to switch it to Zellij. Also, I just heard good things about it. So let's see what Zellij is doing here. So I actually have this set up. So if I do new tab, I could do, what was it? Zellij, do I have it in here? Yeah, this one. And again, it's got to do this stuff because it's like a new code space. Some of these setup tasks, I kind of need to redo them every time that I create a new code space, which is a bit annoying, but fine. So here, I mean, you can see now, the way that the little boxes are highlighted and stuff is different because it's using a different tool, but it's functionally pretty similar. The problem with Zellij is it has this key binding Control G. So you would do like Control G Q to quit it. But as you can see here, VS Code is actually capturing that Control G keybind. So then it's not possible for me to actually quit with the proper keybind my Zellij session. So, I can close each of these things individually, or I can just like delete that terminal. And I'm going to have to adjust the default key bindings for Zellij to make that actually work. Okay, but first this is updated. So let's see what we've got going on here. So here the request URL is being pulled from url.pathname. So this makes sense. The only concern, of course, is that it's not going to include the fragment anymore. So the original URL, it's got of the URL itself, which of course has, the protocol, host name, potentially port, potentially username, password. It's got the path, it's got the query string, and it's got the fragment. The rec.original URL just has the path, query string, and fragment, I believe. And so switching that to path name is good because we're getting the path. It's getting rid of the query params. So this will actually solve our bug here. I just got to let this do whatever it's doing here. What's going on here? Seems like it broke something. Use webhook URL. That's kind of making, what? It's a bit confusing because what we're looking at here is a request that was already sent. So this particular code shouldn't actually change anything to do with that because this is only actually called when we're creating a new request. But for some reason, it's causing a problem. Expected object received null. Oh, that was the auth middleware. Okay. Let's take a look at what we're getting here. Why is this happening now? Okay, so this fetch is not returning a response, and that's why we're getting this error. This should be returning, an object with the request shape. So what is the error here? Is it the authentication thing? That seems odd. I did just log in. Let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. And like if I look at this, it should have a cookie with my session token. Yeah. Let's go into our server here and actually do some debugging. So this is looking at API requests and then request ID. So if I go to the request events controller here, that would be this route. So like if I do console.log, hitting request event, does that log anything? If I go down here, Control C that, run it again. No. Okay, so it seems to be, it's not getting here, which probably means like this is saying it's an error in the auth middleware. Not really sure why that's happening, considering it was working a moment ago. But fine. So let's actually add a debugging line to the auth middleware here as well. So I think that's dashboard server.ts. So each of these things is run through this build controller function, and this runs things through this build controller method, which does a couple things, but basically it authenticates it. So this is just a short way to automatically make sure controllers are authenticated. A lot of times I'll use Express, which has middlewares for this, but in this case, we're actually using Bun's server. If we go back here, like this is using bun.serve, which doesn't actually have middleware support. So we kind of have built it ourselves using this middleware thing, middleware pattern or whatever you'd like to call it. It's not really, it's really more of like a factory pattern, I guess. Technically, we're not doing the middleware because we're not actually passing a next to this, but whatever. So what's going on here? So if I do console.log with auth rec.original URL or rec.url, yeah. Let's just see. Yeah, interesting, because like we see this one works, but this one doesn't for some reason. This one also doesn't, but this one does. Don't know what's up with that. Okay. Anyway, let's see what we've got here. So let's exit this, run it again. So I'm not actually seeing that with auth thing being logged at all. but we're getting this auth middleware error. It's confusing. That is confusing. Why is that happening? Not sure. Let's do /commit here. I'm just kind of curious if there's something to do with this running in a work tree that's causing a problem. This whole stack with this app is something that I've been actively experimenting with, so it's definitely not in what you would call a perfectly stable state. But it should be doing the thing better than it's doing it, I feel like. It's gonna, I don't super like, I mean, it's gonna end up committing these console logs, but whatever, I can undo that. Oh, no, I'm stupid. So the problem here is I added this console log. It's not even in the work tree. This is one of the problems with doing stuff with work trees. I'm still not totally used to it, but like when I did this, I'm adding this in the main branch. I didn't add that in the work tree, you know? So of course it didn't get called because it wasn't even in the code that was getting run. But now we have this commit, and I'm just going to exit this work tree, pull that commit into my main branch, and now we can actually test it with our logs that we added. What? Do I have another work tree running? Where is that other bun run dev coming from? Oh, that might be from that ZellyJ thing I opened. I wonder if that is still running. Can I do like kill all sessions? Yeah, ZellyJ kill all sessions. Yes, and now that shouldn't be running. Yeah, okay. So now if I run it, port 2001, refresh this, and right, 2001. I might have to log in again, but yeah. Okay, so now we actually have the same error again and we can debug it properly. So we do see getting request event. And then, oh, I see. So this is interesting. Actually, this probably shouldn't be in there. Right? Because the problem there is the controller, I believe, is throwing an error, but then it's getting caught by the middleware, which isn't really what we want to see. Instead, if there's an error in the middleware logic, it should short circuit with this return and just never call the controller. Okay, so now if we do this, we're going to get a different error message. What the heck is this? Oh, it's like some bun error page, I guess. Okay. And we can see that it actually tried like 4 times and then it gave up and it's like, oh, there was an error. This is on the front end, we're using tanstack query to load this state. So tanstack query has this behavior of like trying a few times and then it gives up and sets like is error to true or whatever. And we do this. But So it's saying request not found, but why not? Because oh no, that makes sense actually too. So let's try sending a new one here. The reason that said request not found is because that request was actually stored in the worktree database. So, you know, this app uses SQLite to store its data. And test, let's just do foobar. Well, let's put a space in there. Why not? I always like to put something in there to make sure it's getting encoded properly. Okay, so now we have this request here, which is like the actual thing. That other request was only stored in that work tree. So I still don't really know exactly why that error happened. But I think it was something to do with something I was doing wrong. But here we can see this is good. So the problem here now, though, is say I do another one where I do like / fragment query. And, well, let's do it this way. Foo bar. And what if I put something in here? Test var baz fragment ASDF. Yes. Let's see what this does. It's something kind of weird. Okay, so here we see that's there. It successfully pulled both of the query parameters into here, which is great, even when it was not specified in the query parameter table in the form. But the fragment is gone. So that's something that we're going to store as well, I guess. I guess we'll just make another column for that. I'll go ahead and ask Claude to do that. Although really, that's probably something that's simple enough to do myself. I might just do it myself here. So if we go, a lot of times if something's relatively simple, not many lines of code, like I just want to do it myself. Because it takes longer for Claude to like think about it and stuff than for me to actually do it. So we're going to add a fragment here, and this is going to be just a string, a nullish string like this one. And maybe I should call that request URL fragment. Yeah, let's do that. Sure. Okay, and so that also needs then, like these all should be updated. It's not being coerced to or from JSON, so we don't need to do anything there. I think that's the main thing. Also, let's get rid of these console logs. Right. So kind of an explanation on that maybe. We're storing this data in SQLite. SQLite does not have a JSON type at all. So we have to coerce these values to and from strings if it's a complex object before we can store it or when we retrieve it. So like this is like when we're going to store it, we coerce these JSON fields into strings, and we coerce these base64 encoded payloads into buffers. I have them base64 encoded just because that way it's actually valid JSON that you can send directly over the wire. But you often need to coerce it into a buffer in order to use it, basically. Anyway, so that's fine. And I think that the other thing we would need to do here is add a new migration. So if I go in database migrations, you know, we could basically copy this. And I think I have a command to make migrations, right? Yeah. Run, migrate, create. And I think it was like something like add request URL fragment. Yeah, so it just scaffolds this migration. Just going to put this in there. This one's going to be request URL. Let's copy from the schema actually. this one. Yep. Cool. And yeah, that's pretty much it, really. So in terms of actually adding it to the UI, I guess I would put it here as well. So this would, it's not part of the metadata, really. Metadata is, if you're querying for a list of all of the request events, it'll exclude these fields, like for rendering in the sidebar. But when you actually query for the whole request event, they will be included, like for rendering the page. Okay. And this, yeah, there's a weird thing with these schemas, the Zod schemas, that I just have to fix the types for that here, but it's not relevant. Alrighty, so I think that should be good, actually. What I will do is I will have Claude add UI for this. Yes, proceed. And actually, I just remembered I need to run it with the dangerously flag, which I often forget to do when I'm not running it with my script. Okay, so we just added a request URL fragment column to the request event schema. Now this needs to be populated in webhook server when new requests are received, and it needs to be rendered in the UI in request page. Yeah, sure. So Claude's going to think about that. Meanwhile, I'm going to commit this. This is like controller with auth function should not catch controller errors. Yep. And then these are just like adding the URL fragment. This migration thing is kind of interesting because I'm not actually using a SQL ORM or anything like that. This migration code is hand rolled. If we look at this index here, it actually, all of the code for the migration is right here. Doesn't take much. And I'm actually using the bun SQL library. I tried to use as many of the built-in bun dependencies as I could for this project. So we're using bun server, bun for client-side code bundling. If we look at dashboard server.ts, all of these pages, it's like they're actually just importing this HTML. So it's like this extreme magic that's going on, but actually this is not just importing the HTML, it's running it through this full bundler pipeline. Kind of similar to like with Vite, except it's all in bun. And I'm also using the bun SQLite API. Okay, so let's see what Claude did here. So yeah, nothing there. So this adds that. It slices off the, the octothorpe at the beginning of the hash. And it should have also updated the request page. Yeah, to log that. Okay, so let's test it out. Let's do a new thingy here. Fun run dev. One other kind of cool thing about this app, in my opinion, is that it has server sent events. So you see it opens a stream where whenever a request is actually sent, it pops up here automatically. So like if I'm over here, I could do like curl localhost 3000. It is 3000, right? Yeah, the HTTP webhook server. Slash foo question mark bar equals baz fragment test. What? What? Okay. Something ZSH was trying to do something with that. Maybe because of the question mark or the octothorpe. I don't know. Anyway. Well, I kind of ruined it because I refreshed it, but you could have seen the food here. Let's do that again. Just to show off the... So if I do foo SSE, you can see that that just appeared here without me doing anything because of that server send events thing. I think that's cool. But so we can see, this should have query parameters and a fragment. I'm not seeing the fragment though. Why not? Let's look at the request. So the fragment here is null. So it's not actually being populated. And why not? It should be something in here. But this URL URL.toString. Let's just see what we've got here. So this is coming from the original URL. Maybe that never had fragment in it to begin with. Oh, does a fragment even get sent to the server? Now I'm like thinking, wait. The server doesn't even see the fragment, does it? Let me look that up. The fragment is not sent to the server. Okay, well. Never mind, revert everything. Don't need this. I completely forgot about that part of the fragment. Well, let's just revert them all at once. So we don't need this, don't need this, don't need that. URL fragment, and we don't need this either. Yeah, just get rid of them all. Discard all 4 files. Okay. Well, that makes it a little simpler. We can push these changes. Because we're in code space, you can just like push it. It automatically uses something, some pre-configured SSH key or something like that. So kind of the other thing that I might do here during this stream, just to kind of pass a little more time, because I've been working on it anyway, is fix this ZeliJ thing, because I'd like this to work. So we need to fix the keyboard shortcuts, first of all. So let's look at what ZeliJ has to say for itself about that. So we want to use, ZeliJ has 2 modes. There's like normal mode, and then there's like don't override stuff mode. Like this one, default mode. So let's try to compose this configuration file. And where would this be stored? Config zelij. Okay, and maybe I'll just run this. Let's just see what this does. And then if we go in here, normal, resize, locked, Control G. So this is like Control G is switching us to normal mode. Normal mode is like where you actually have the key bindings. So in theory, if I change this, to the same thing that Tmux uses, which is Control B. And then I do zelij again. Is that going to work? Let's just, I was going to run it with the layout, but let's just do it like this. zelij. And then I can do, like, don't show me these tips. I don't know why that's a thing. So if I do Control B, it's putting me in another mode, I guess, because it changed color. And then I can do Q. No. Control Q. No. Control B, Control Q. So like it says Control plus Q, quit. Control Q. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap with VS Code. The Tmux key bindings are actually a lot. They work a lot better for me by default here. Let's actually code.config, zelij, config. And these changes that we're making here are just temporary because we're doing them directly in our code space here. Do I mind explaining a bit what this project is about? Sure. The idea with this particular project is we are building a web app that responds to arbitrary HTTP requests, and it logs the request and response in a SQLite database for later inspection. And then there's this dashboard, you know, it's a password protected dashboard that you can use to view those requests and responses. So it's similar to something like webhook.site if you've used that before. It's a tool that you would use to debug your webhooks or some other webhook. Like if you wanted to debug like a GitHub webhook, you would use this tool. You're like, what's it sending my app exactly? I want to see exactly the headers. You can use this. And it has some interesting features as well, just to call out, like for instance, with JWTs, and actually a variety of different types of headers. You can like inspect the header and it'll like parse it out for you. Or like for bearer token, for example, well, that's kind of a silly example. For basic, for example, it'll also like parse out the username and password shown in the header. And you know, it's just got a bunch of random stuff. There's actually like a JWT validation tool that you can use. So yeah, it's got some stuff. But I'm actually just working on this temporarily, probably just for this stream. After this, I'm going to be doing another project. My plan for the project, and kind of the reason for that, is because I'm heavily vibe coding for this particular project. It's extremely vibe coded. I don't know how good of a streaming experience that actually is. Like to watch. So I'll probably be starting another app after this stream that's actually not vibe coded, but I just finished up the app that I was working on for the past 20 something episodes, and this is sort of like a placeholder in between. And I'm trying to get this ZLEJ stuff to work, but it's frustrating me to the point where I'm wondering if it's even worth it to use this instead of tmux, because I have tmux and it does work. So I'll think about that. I don't want to have to redefine all these key bindings, but they just don't work inside VS Code very well. Switch to mode normal, Control B, and then like in normal mode, where's Q? Yeah, Control Q quits. Shared except locked. What if I just change that to Q? Just kind of experimenting here. So now, I should be able to type a Q. Famous last words. So this is, I need it to default me into locked mode. And there is a setting for that over here, right? Default mode locked, yeah. And this goes into this same file, config.kdl. Let's open that again. Did it open it? I don't see it open. Let's do it with Helix, I guess. Helix. And we're going to yeah. I'm still getting used to Helix. I'm so used to Vim. It's taken me a while to adapt. So if we set default mode locked and then do ZLEJ again, now I should be able to type a Q. But if I do Control B, Q, it quits. So those are the settings that we need. But now we need to encode this into our Docker file. So let's do that. So we will first have it run this command itself. Where's my ZLEJ configuration? I guess it might as well be around here. ZLEJ settings. So first we're going to do that. And, we can just expand the tilde. I don't know if tilde expansion works in Docker files. I guess it probably does, but. And then we would run echo something. Default mode locked, right? Default mode locked. Can go into that same file. And then we also are going to need to do a replace on the one line. Or we could add it maybe. Like if I do add keybinds, locked, bind, Control B. switch to mode. No. So now it's going to switch to mode normal, and then this, we've got open, 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 close, close, close. So we've got matching braces here. And I might as well put some new lines in here as well. So like after keybinds, like here, we would do, I could do, I don't know, probably there's a better way to do this, like multi-line, but I'm not going to figure that out at the moment. So like 2 space, 4 space. And then the bind stuff is all on one line. And then we'd have a new line here. A new line here. 2 space. And then another new line here. Something like that. Let's actually do that and see what it does. It's kind of a complicated echo statement there. Then if we look down at the bottom, there's probably a faster way to do this. How the heck long is this file? Can I use G to get to the end? No. Anyway, keybinds, locked, bind, control B. Switch to mode normal. Looks good. Do I need a semicolon after that? Looks like I might need a semicolon. And yeah, that should be good. And this, I'll just do another dash in there as well. Okay, so now let's actually quit this. Let's make sure that our thing here is working. So we're going to dump the config. We're going to run this. And we're going to run this. And then if we look at this again, is it actually going to, yeah, okay. So now if I do ZLEJ again, I should be able to do Control B, Q, quit, but it didn't work. Why not? If I do Control G, it doesn't work. So we can see the normal mode thing worked, but the keybinds didn't. Maybe because you can't have multiple keybinds blocks. Or maybe it didn't actually put it in there. Scroll faster, please. Why is it not in there? I ran this, right? Okay, now it's in there. And if I run it, yeah, it's like it reset itself. So obviously that doesn't work. I'm going to have to actually edit this line, which I didn't really want to have to do. Because I don't remember how to do that. I guess I could ask Claude. Sure. Oops. So let's actually reset that. And then I could do Claude. I wonder, I've never tried editing a Docker file with Claude. I wonder if it'll work. Add a line to the ZeLiJ settings part of the Docker file. Not that one though. It's .dev container. Why isn't it finding that one? Can Claude not find things when it's in a dot directory? Let's see. How do I find a line in a file and replace it with something else using sed? I could just Google this, but I kind of want to see what Claude has to say. It would be like this. So let's do that. Except up here, right? Run, doink. And it's going to do that on this file. And we're going to replace Control G with Control B. Right? Is that going to work? Let's see. Looks familiar. Well, it might have worked. Yeah, so that did work. The problem is we still have to run the other line too. If I run this as well. And do ZeLiJ. Then I should be able to Control B. And then Q. No. Control Q. Control Q with Q. Oh dear. Sometimes having to put all this stuff in a Docker file is irritating. Now what's going on here? Tab's frozen. Pushed the wrong button. So if we do that now, oh, without the run, of course. And then do it again. Can I actually exit it now? Control B, Q, yes. Okay, so now we actually have that configured. It's kind of janky, but whatever. Let's make sure that works by restarting our code space here. Yeah, code space rebuild container. Rebuild. And yeah, I have some plans for this app to support some extra stuff that I think could be pretty cool. Like right now, it only works for HTTP 1.1 requests, but I'd also be curious to allow it to capture and inspect HTTP 2 requests. I think there's some additional information there, although I'm not sure if it's exposed at the application layer. But if we look at bun HTTP 2, there's like a thing for that, right? I don't really want guides. I want docs. HTTP server. So I'm actually using TLS. This server does support TLS termination. And part of the reason that I wanted it to support TLS termination is so that we can see the properties of the TLS handshake that happened. because the whole point of this tool is to inspect requests, right? And one of the things I want to inspect is like, okay, what cipher did you decide on? What were the ciphers that were the options? Like, what's the certificate that's being used? You know, those types of things. But you can't really see any of that in Bun. Apparently, there's like actually an outstanding issue where you can't retrieve the like TLS socket info. So it supports TLS. You just can't actually inspect it, which is kind of the whole point of this app. But anyway, it's understandable though. I mean, the Bun stuff is really new. So you expect there to be some rough edges. And then does this talk about HTTP2 at all? Doesn't seem like it. Guess that's why the search didn't return anything. Is this still in progress or is it implemented? Oh, the HTTP client was implemented. This one's also closed though. Okay, so it should be possible to do HTTP2 with the node HTTP2. And I'm curious, like what additional metadata does this have, if any? It's got this session. So this is interesting. This is like the kind of thing I was looking at. So there's this HTTP2 session. That's not a thing in HTTP 1.1, as far as I know. And like you can see, I mean, the state's probably not that interesting, but like the settings might have some interesting stuff in there. Yeah, all that stuff. It's a little annoying that you can't support HTTP 1.1 and HTTP 2 on the same port. Because the server is already using a lot of ports. So like right now we actually have, oh, we did get an error when we were trying to do this. We actually have 3 ports exposed. There's the admin server, which is plain HTTP, TLS terminated by fly. We have the HTTP server, which is plain HTTP, not TLS terminated by fly. And then we have the HTTPS server, which is TLS terminated by the app. And then we're going to also have an HTTP2 server, which will be TLS terminated by the app. That's 4 ports. I guess I don't know. It's just hard to remember all those ports, you know. It would be nice if you could just send. Well, I guess it kind of makes sense. Anyway, let's see what's going on here before I get too distracted. Some kind of error. Directory non-existent. Oh yeah, got to do a make dir p thing. Docker file. Okay, so it's not happy in the workspace. It should have opened a recovery workspace though, code space. Usually if the code space can't spin up, it'll create like a recovery code space you can use to edit things. Otherwise you get kind of borked here. Hopefully that's not what's happening to me. Because didn't I have like commits in there and stuff too? I mean, don't really want to lose that code space. It's got to do a bunch of stuff, and then eventually this is going to fail. And then I should have the option to open a recovery code space. Creating recovery containers. So see, it's doing this now. Kind of as a side note too, this actual Docker file and everything that I'm using for this code space is something that I took from Claude Code. The official Claude Code documentation has like this example dev space configuration. It's not really meant for code spaces. It's more meant for running actually in a container on your computer, but it works just fine in code space as well, assuming you disable the firewall that blocks incoming connections, which prevents you from actually connecting to your code space instance. But if you disable that, it works. And then I've added a bunch of tools and things to it over time as well, based on my own personal desires here. Yeah, so it's definitely not happy. Oh, that was weird. But I should have a recovery code space. Not sure what's going on with that. Let's try opening it over here. You there, open in browser. It's going to do just the same thing again. Try to launch it, fail. Open workspace. This one, I guess. Okay, open that. It's crazy that this all works in your browser, by the way. I mean, how crazy is this? Okay, and I have my changes. Okay, so it is working. It's just like, just weird. Yeah, I know it's not, I know that. Okay, so what we need to do here is actually run make dir key this first. That was what the error was telling us. So once we fix that, and then we could commit this as like add J settings or the WT script. Sure. Okie doke. I'm going to go ahead and push that just in case I can't. Okay, maybe I won't. I'll just hold off on that. But okay, so now we fixed that particular thing. So we should be able to actually go over here, rebuild container, and this time it should work. Oh. Let's watch. It's doing the stuff. So that part's where it's basically pulling the base image, and now it's starting to run through the steps in the Docker file to build my image. Okay, and we can see it got through those sed commands without any issue. Here. So we should be good for the rest of the thing to complete, because all of the rest of the lines have been tested before. Okay, done. So now we're back in. We can sync that change. And now we would need to update our work tree script to actually use that zellyj command instead of what it's doing now, which is kind of complicated. So when it initially runs, sort of down near the bottom here, it does these tmux commands. Kill session, new session, splits it again, opens some stuff in the different sessions, does a bunch of this and that's. We're actually going to replace all of this really with that zellyj command, whatever that was. Oh, and we lost our history. I think it was like zellyj layout dot zellyj / work tree dot something kdl. Okay. And is there a way to give it a name? Yes, with -s. So it would be -s. Yeah. And get rid of all that weird stuff. Get rid of that. In fact, this is actually going to be called with this thing. So let's do that here. So zellyj layout -s session name. Then put in the commas. Comma, comma, comma. And the reason, I'll just rename this to zellyj proc. I could be having Claude do all this, but I'm just doing it myself. I'm going to continue to log. I mean, there's not really much point in logging this because you're not going to see it. So let's actually just get rid of that. Get rid of all of that. All that. And get rid of that. I don't think we need that anymore. And this, I'll just call this like work tree. There's no reason to like specifically mention the tool being used. And if I look for tmux, do we use tmux commands anywhere else in this file? Yeah. When we're cleaning up. Actually, it's used in a lot of places, looks like. What's going on up here? Oh, there's attach. Okay, well, I'll deal with that in a minute. First, let's see that this actually works. So if I do wt new now, it's gonna slowly do the install. Okay, what? Yes, clean it up. That's interesting. It just immediately exited. So we see like creating new session. And then it says there is no active session. What does that mean? That's not coming from my script, is it? No. Must be some issue with how I'm calling ZillyJ here. Let me try doing it by hand. ZillyJ, layout, ZillyJ, worktree, S, test session. If I run it without that, that works. So obviously that -s is not doing what I think it does. Escape? Get me out of here, man. Gosh. So why? Maybe I have to do that one. Like if I do like -n. Let's try that. Okay, that worked. Okay, quit. Cool. So now I should be able to actually run the script and it will do that as well, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. Alrighty. So we did that. Now I'm going to get rid of the attach command maybe, because I don't really use that anyway. For the cleanup one, let's see here, tmux. So this one, I don't think we really even need that cleanup. And if we go up here, get rid of that comment. Yep. And then for this particular one where we attach to session, I'm actually going to delete that. And now, where are we talking about tmux? Attaches to an existing, right. So this we can actually get rid of as well. And we can get rid of that. And if I search for attach, we can clean this up as well. And this part, if command equals attached, this whole thing can be deleted. Cool. So now if I do WT, it's just not going to mention the attach, which is fine. That was a feature that I had never really used. And with the ZillyJ thing, I think it's easier to do those attachments too. ZillyJ actually has an interesting feature where you can even resume a session that's been terminated. Like even if the session is ended, you can like relaunch it as well, which is interesting. Let's say update work tree script to use ZillyJ instead of tmux. And then we can remove tmux as a dependency here as well. So like over here, there's like, I mean, not much harm in having it installed, I guess. In fact, let's just leave it. Why not? It's just there. It's there in the container in case I want it someday. Okay, let's push that. And then maybe we can try and wrap up by actually doing one more change here, actual change to the app. So this one checked off. Yep. This we did. Yep. This we did. This can go away. This we did. But I don't want to do something too complicated because I don't have a ton of time here. What I might do is see how Claude handles HMAC verification. I'm kind of curious how that works. But I feel like it'll be a little complicated. Let's see. So if I do WT new again, the idea here is that we want to be able to inspect and verify HMAC signatures as a testing tool. Dark mode. Let's slide this up a bit. Dark mode. What? No. What is going on here? It's not, yes, dark mode. Okay. Cloud account with subscription, which I have to do again because it's a new container. It would be nice if there was some way of like not having to do this each time I recreate the dev space container. But if there is, I don't know what it is. Yes, use recommended settings. Yes, I accept. Okay. And all those steps, I don't have to do that again until I rebuild the container, which only happens when I'm actually editing that Docker file. So it's not like I have to do that every time, but it is annoying. Okay, so let's say analyze how the authorization header inspector works. And actually, while it's doing that, I can explain to you how it works. So in this authorization file here, we actually have these functions which will parse out headers based on, the header type or the authorization type, like if it's bearer or basic or digest or whatever. And it'll extract values from that. The JWT one is a little bit more complicated. It's actually parsing out the segments of the JWT. And then this kind of allows you to sort of inspect some of those values in the UI. So now we want to add the ability to inspect HMAC authorization headers and other headers, e.g. signature, as sent by Gitty, GitHub, like API clients. Kind of curious how Claude's going to handle this. If it balloons out of control, I might not have time to wrap this particular feature up today, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. To me, this is a good example where I like using Claude Code because it's actually been so long since I've had to deal with these headers that I totally forgot how they work. You know, there's something about like the signature, you've got to like calculate a signature based on the contents of the request, and then the server has to do it the same way, and then it's like it has to match, and then there's something else to it as well, maybe. And like it can be sent in the authorization header, or it can be sent in like one of these custom signature headers. I don't know. So we'll see what Claude thinks about it. So it's making this file, you know, utility function for HMAC related stuff, which is good. And it's creating this other one over here. This is the UI for it, signature inspector. And then in the headers table, it's probably going to be like, if it is a signature header, then show the inspector. Yeah. Seems like there might be some redundancy in here. So like parsed auth HMAC, bit of a mouthful. Compare that to this parsed HMAC signature. I don't know. There might be some redundancy here in the code that it's generating that we might have to ask it to clean up. But first, we'll actually have it generate a sample request for us as well. Once it's done thinking, do 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 do. This is why I use multiple work trees, by the way. If there was something else I wanted to do at the same time, I could just click this new button here and I could do WT new again. And it's going to open up a separate work tree with a separate folder, separate server, separate branch. Just get sheesh. I don't like that pop-up either. I got to figure out how to turn that off. I do like the way IntelliJ seems to work, but I don't like that part. The configuration's a bit of a pain. This is interesting. It should be picking a new port. I must have broken that functionality when I edited the script. Like it's creating this .env.local. And I didn't change that part. Oh, but what I did change is I forgot to do this in the subdirectory. So this is going to have to change. Like I would do like CWD would be work tree path. Okay. Fix that. Let's commit that. Launch ZJ in work tree directory. Because right now it's not actually working as intended. For which reason, let's also quit this. Control PQ. But I don't have anything else I'm doing anyway, so it doesn't really matter. One of the nice things about Claude 2 here, you can see it's got these tests that it's writing. And if it doesn't try and write tests, you know, I prompt it for that. You can see it's testing, yeah, a variety of different signatures here. And then also in the authorization header test, it's allowing you to do this stuff. Okay. See this flashing? I don't really know what's causing that. It's annoying though. Like it stops if I try to scroll up. But as soon as I scroll down, it starts to flash. And the same thing was happening in Tmux. That was actually part of the reason I wanted to switch to ZJ to see if that same flashing was going to happen again. JUnit. Oh, reporter. Just run it. You don't need a reporter. We can also run it ourselves, you know. Clean up the work tree, yeah. Or wait, no. Should I have done that? Yeah, that's right. Okay. So it did the thing. You know, I'm going to also tell it to add a sample request for HMAC or with an HMAC signature to the seed utility. So if we look here, just for the sake of testing, basically, I have this file where it sends a bunch of sample requests. And I want to have the HMAC one in here as well, so we can just see what that looks like in the UI without me having to construct that request myself each time. And meanwhile, I can open the UI, so that's port 3001 here. Let's close this. Port 3001, refresh. Yeah, okay. And we're not going to be able to see much. This all should still work the same way it did before. But once it adds the ability to send that code sample, which you can see, yeah. So now if I actually, let's refresh this again just to make sure we've got that. And then if I click this thing here and I click send demo requests, it's going to send a bunch of those, including, so here we have those. And we can kind of see Git signature. You can see stuff. Raw value, algorithm signature. I mean, there's not a lot of information there, really. I kind of wanted to also like validate the signature. This one's like authorization. Yeah. Some things put it in the authorization header, I think. Some things don't. Yeah, okay. That's not bad to start with, though. Let's commit this. Oops. Select the right thing. Commit. And then I'm going to add validation to this as well, where I can actually check the signature. I think we should be able to do that. It can be kind of difficult because you need to know like the exact bytes that are in the body of the request and the headers too, if I recall, but should be possible. But I don't think I'm going to do that this stream because we are kind of running out of time. Actually, we're over our 2 hour mark already. So let's just let this finish up. And, you know, I will take suggestions, or maybe another way to put it is I'm interested in folks' feedback. Ultimately, does it seem interesting to watch this vibe coding process and to continue working on this webhook testing tool app on stream or not? It's different from normal development. It's very different. That can be good in a way because it's learning a new mode. Like I'm heavily in my learning zone when it comes to this stuff with using AI for development. But also because of that, I'm not really in much of a teaching mode. Whereas when I'm writing the code myself, that's something I've had over 10 years of experience with writing code. I can explain it well and I can kind of teach best practices and stuff. So there's two very different sort of modalities there. Curious to hear folks' thoughts. Let's see, drop to shell. What am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing. Okay, let's refresh this here. Just see, yep, the new commits. Let's push that. And then I should be able to do Control B, Q, clean up. Yes, it's already cleaned up though, but that's okay. All right. Anyway, the alternative is I'm going to start a new app. Considering starting a new app, and it'll be another one similar to the exercise tracker where I'll be working on it on stream exclusively. So unlike this one where I'm just jumping right into something that's already pretty well developed, I'm going to be building the new app from scratch. I think what I want to build is an analytics tool, kind of as a bit of a spoiler here. So like if we look at simple analytics, this is what I use for analytics for my sites. Like if I go to blog.luketurner, if I can spell my name, .org, inspect, network, let's refresh that. So we're hitting this simple analytics GIF here. There's also like a JavaScript thing. These are both from that simple analytics CDN. And to me, this is a good balance of, I want to be able to know how many users are viewing my stuff. I don't really care about much beyond that basic idea. How many people are looking? What's their like unique visitor count? But I don't want to send that data to Google. So I use the simple analytics platform instead. It tracks a relatively minimal set of data compared to what Google Analytics does. It doesn't identify users, and it doesn't save users' IP addresses or other data for a long time. In fact, it might not save it at all. I don't really remember. But it's relatively privacy focused, which is important to me. At the same time, and it does cost money, which is okay. But, I pay $15 a month for this thing. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I think it would be fun to build this myself. I don't have a problem with simple analytics. I'd be happy to keep using it. But how cool would it be if I had my own analytics platform, also hosted on Fly, and it could, I could control what data is collected, and obviously I could control how that data is used. It's not sent to any third-party companies at all. I think that would be nice. It'd also be a good learning experience. So that's my plan for the next piece of work I'm going to do on the stream is I'm going to build a self-hosted analytics platform. If that interests you, feel free to stop by. I'm going to be a little bit busy this summer because I'm planning on moving. Like next weekend, I might not be able to stream because I might be in another city looking at apartments. I'm not exactly sure exactly when that's going to happen though, so it might not be next weekend. But I'll be updating my schedule on Twitch, to kind of indicate when I am going to miss the streams if I am. But I just wanted to call that out as well as an FYI. And yeah, when I come back, we'll be working on an analytics platform. Not vibe coded is the plan, although I accept feedback on that. And, that'll be fun, hopefully. Cool. Well, thanks, y'all. Talk to you later.